Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. Happy NFL Draft Week, everybody. It's here. I'm super excited. It's going to be so fun to watch who, drafts who and what teams are going to go all out this year and who's going to, make the smartest picks. And I'm really excited to have it all back and ready to talk about it tonight on this episode of Boston Balling, the late night version of the show. I'm excited to bring on with me a guest who has his own Patriots podcast, which he's going to talk about in 1 second. The host of the Patriots 300 level podcast, Kevin Borrelli. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely looking forward to doing some Patriots talk with you.
Yeah, me too. Very excited.
So yeah, I just, mentioned it. You do have a podcast that you co-host with somebody Eric, who unfortunately had something come up and was unable to make it on here with us right now. But could you just talk a little bit about your podcast and how and when it got started?
Yeah. So thanks for having me again. So I am one of the two co-hosts of the Patriots 300 level podcast. We started about 2 years ago. And we were just talking one day and we're like, we do all this Patriots talk together. Why don't we just have a podcast? And who knows, maybe we'll get big. Maybe it'll be broadcast to no one, but it'd be at least doing the same thing and have a chance of having others hear our opinions. So we've been really following the team pretty much ever since I can really remember. So my earliest memories are in like probably 96 with Bledsoe in the Patriots, and have been a really big fan ever since then. We've had season tickets in our family since the early 2000s. So we've been really big Patriots fans. Our whole family has been, and really enjoy the team, talking about not only the team, but football as well, and transactions, and really just breaking down different plays. So if anyone wants to give us a look-see, we're the Patriots 300 level podcast. You can find us on any sort of wherever you can get your podcast. So like Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We also have a blog, Pat's 300levelpod.com, where we have some blogs about the offseason, trying to break down what's going on, different moves. We'll have some more after the draft to kind of break down what happened. And then you could also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300levelpod. On there, just to get any of our up-to-the-minute updates there as well.
That's awesome. Good for you. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. I feel like to be able to have your own show and just kind of put your unique identity into it and just be able to share your thoughts on different things that are going on.
Yeah. No, agreed. And then I think one of the big things with us too is that we try not to be very like hot take central, where we're not trying to be like some of the other sports media out there where they're trying to just lay out the hot take to try and get views or anything like that. We really want to play it how it actually is. And it may not be the most fiery sort of thing where we're trying to throw something out there to get takes, but we're trying to give you the honest opinions and what actually is really happening rather than trying to stir up controversy or anything like that.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear some of the like bigger networks and some of the big personalities and the things that they're saying. And I'm like, there's no way you actually feel this way. You're definitely just doing it to get the engagement on, what you're saying.
No, agreed.
But that's super cool. How long have you guys had the podcast?
I think 2 years we've had it. So it was we started in Mac's first year, so 2021.
Nice.
This will be our third season of us doing it, going into the season.
That's awesome. Good for you guys. Yeah, it's definitely cool to be able to have that passion that you share with each other too. It's too bad Eric wasn't able to make it with us tonight, but I'm sure he he definitely probably does just as good of a job as you, and we'll have to do it again another time with him on as well.
Oh yeah, sounds good. We're always up for collaboration.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so obviously it's been an interesting off season so far, especially within the AFC East. There's been a lot of moves. I think obviously, the most recent being Aaron Rodgers officially being a Jet now, which is totally weird to see him in a Jets press conference was super weird. Obviously we all knew that it was coming. They were just kind of trying to figure everything out logistically and work it out. So I was mentally prepping myself for that to happen. I've seen a lot of, takes that are feeling like the Jets somehow are now all of a sudden a lot better than they were last year, which, yes, I do think that they're better than they were last year, but I don't think that they're necessarily, because of that one move, a team that is a Super Bowl contender. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I did want to get your thoughts on that because it was obviously the biggest news in football that broke yesterday. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Oh no, I agree completely. Where I don't think having Aaron Rodgers is going to put them to the top of the AFC East as a no brainer or anything like that. The Bills obviously are the team to beat in there, and then even the Dolphins, even the Patriots for what they have. The Patriots may not have the best roster or the most talent when you look on paper versus everyone, but the coaching is a big part too, and just the step of adding Bill O'Brien and why am I blanking on his name? The offensive line coach for the team. So Adrian Clem. So adding them is a huge addition. So just looking at players isn't always the thing you need to look at. It's really a combination of everything. And then just looking at Aaron Rodgers, how has he played the last few years, and really how has he played in general? Is he a winner, or is he, as I say, I think he's more of a loser. He's made it to the NFC Championship a number of times and has choked away at the end and hasn't actually made the next step forward. So how is he going to kind of really react in the New York kind of media outlet? And then also how he's going to act with the Jets, where the Jets, as we know, they haven't really won anything in my lifetime, at least. So how is that going to happen? I'm not going to really believe it with them until I actually see it. Do they have a really good team? They do. They've got a lot of talent on there. They've got a lot of weapons. They've had some really good drafts recently. Can they put everything together? And the biggest thing for him, really, Aaron Rodgers is really talented. I'll give him that. He's top 5 quarterback in the league. Very, very talented. The big thing is he going to be engaged, and is he going to really have that drive and motivation to succeed? We saw it with Brady when he left the Patriots for Tampa. He actually started doing the offseason workouts, which he skipped for the Patriots the last 3 or 4 years with them. So is Rodgers going to take that dedication and step, or is he going to try and just play on his ability on its own? And that's really a big question. So his motivation, I think, is the big key here. If he's highly motivated, if he wants to prove the Packers wrong, if he wants to put all the work in, I think they're going to be a really hard team to beat. It's just, I don't know. Is he going to do it? He hasn't seemed all in the last few years. So is this going to be the kind of the breath of fresh air for him where he can get that motivation? Or is he going to just lay back and say, I'm really talented. I could do it on my own. I don't need to practice. I don't need to do this. I don't need to go in the off season and do all this sort of work. So that's the big question mark. So I don't think it's a shoo-in where they're going to be number 1 or even number 2. It could be, it's a really big kind of question mark with them. And it could be really good, could be really bad, could be average. So I don't think we know for sure certain.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with somebody prior to that news being broke this week, was just about whether the Jets are in a good enough place where just getting Aaron Rodgers could put them in automatic
Mhm,
championship contention. And my answer was no. I do feel like you said, there's a lot of talent on that team, and they
mhm,
are a good team. And I do think they're going to be better than last year, but I still don't think they're quite at the point now where just Aaron Rodgers is going to
mhm,
automatically put them in Super Bowl contention in my eyes. I agree with you. I don't think they're even going to be the best team in the division this
mhm,
year. I certainly think they're going to be more competitive than they were last year, and this division has only gotten better since last year, which is crazy just with how good it already is.
mhm,
But I don't think the Jets are quite at the point now where I can confidently say, like, you know, Aaron Rodgers is it for you, and like you got the one piece you needed to be able to make a serious run. And I think,
mhm,
you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned just his work ethic and even his leadership. I feel like his last couple of years with the Packers, he hasn't really been the best leader for them and the guy that they needed him to be. And I don't know if that's because he needed a change of scenery or if he's just kind of getting over it altogether, just the whole thing altogether. But I think, when it comes to him, he needs to really be locked in and focused. And I haven't really gotten that he's been 100% locked in and focused the last couple of years. And like you said, motivated to be able to make a deep run. And because of his postseason history, too, it's like, how could people really feel confident that he can lead your team to a Super Bowl with the constant choking that he's done in games when it really
Mhm.
mattered down the stretch in the past few seasons, you know?
Yep. No, agreed completely.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. One thing I will say about the Jets is, if they can draft well, I think that'll also put them in a good place. They obviously drafted pretty well last year, and I think they're, set up pretty well to draft well again this year. So I think that's going to be good for them if they can figure that out. But, the division is still tough, and I still have Buffalo as the team to beat because that's a really complete team in the AFC East.
Yeah, no, agree complete. I'd say Buffalo number one. Question mark from two to four. Really could be a toss up between anyone.
Yeah, I'm still not. I mean, I've been saying this the entire time he's been there, but I'm still not high on Tua. I'm
Hmm.
not really convinced still that Tua is the guy for the Dolphins that can really take them all the way. And I know there are people who disagree with that, Dolphins fans in particular, that I know
Hmm.
who feel like he might be the guy, but I just don't think that he's done enough, in my opinion, to really show that he's the guy that can lead that team all the way.
Agree completely. Eric and I kind of share the same sentiment with that. I think Tua is a okay quarterback. Not anything special, but I think he can. What really helps him is the talent that's around him, and I think really building a roster is really one of two directions. Either you have that elite quarterback where he can lift everyone else up, so like Patrick Mahomes, like Joe Burrow, or you have a quarterback and that you surround with a bunch of talent. Look at the 49ers, look at maybe the Eagles. We don't really know really what Hurts is yet, just because
Yeah.
he's surrounded with so much talent. So is he that elite quarterback? Or is he just a product of what's around him? It'll be interesting over the next few years to really see what happens with that. So with Tua, I feel it's more where they just have him really surrounded. That's why he performed the best that he has last year. But I don't think he's got what it takes to really elevate what's around him. I think, and that's I think at the end of the year, when it gets into playoff time, when it gets into big games, is he going to have enough to try and lead that team when you can't just rely upon the people around you? You have to do something to make a play. And I don't think he has it. I think he's just an average quarterback. And then the big thing with him too is the concussions, where he had multiple concussions last year. And once you get one, it's much more easier to get another one. Since he had two or three really bad ones, what's the likelihood he's going to have another one or two this year, and then maybe out for the year, maybe out for his career, because we saw what happened with Steve Young in his career and other quarterbacks. So that's another thing too. Just not even talking about his play, but just his the concussion part, his health, and that's not something he can control. But it's a medical factor, and they're a lot more aware of it now, and it's a lot more taken seriously than it used to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I saw something the other day about how, he was contemplating retirement because of all of
Hmm.
the concussions. And I thought that was interesting because obviously he's still pretty young, so
Hmm.
theoretically he would have a lot of his career left ahead of him. So from that standpoint, it is a little bit unfortunate just to see how his career has played out so far.
Hmm.
And just the fact that he just hasn't been able to be healthy and really play as much as he would have liked to. So some people probably could argue that he hasn't really gotten a chance to prove himself yet
Hmm.
at this level, which is true. But also, I just still, based on, what we have seen from him, I just don't know that he really can continue to grow as a quarterback.
Agreed.
And then obviously there's Josh Allen, who's just special and just
Yeah.
just a very, very unique quarterback. But yeah,
Hmm.
you need to elevate the talent around you, and that's something that Brady did so well with. And what
Hmm.
made him such a special quarterback was when he was with the Patriots. We watched him make everybody around him better, and that's what made him, the GOAT. It was just not only just the Super Bowl titles, but also just his way of leading the team and the way that he was able to make everybody else on the team better. And that's
Yep.
what you need out of a successful quarterback.
Yep. Agreed completely.
Yeah, so speaking of the Patriots, like we talked about, they're in a really tough, really competitive division. We saw a lot go wrong last season. A lot of it super frustrating because there were mistakes that they kept making over and over again
Mhm.
that seemed like they were fixable and they didn't fix them. And then obviously the whole Matt Patricia situation was just a
Mhm.
mess, and why he was even in that position in the first place was mind-boggling to me.
Mhm.
But it just was, the whole thing was just a disaster from an offensive standpoint, because it was really upsetting because they did have a strong defense, which was to be
Mhm.
expected because they usually consistently have a pretty good defense. But if you don't have the offense to pair with it, then obviously you're not going anywhere. And I do want to get your take on this aspect of it before we jump into the draft, is
Mhm.
the Mac Jones situation, because there's obviously a lot of mixed opinions from the fans on Mac Jones,
Mhm.
whether he really is the guy and he's somebody who, they can really see being the guy for the future for this team, or
Mhm.
if he's just not it and they just need to pivot to a different direction at quarterback. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on Mac?
Yeah, I think Eric and I again share this kind of same sentiment on this too, where we're both kind of big believers in Mac. Again, last year was really unfair to him, and he didn't really get a chance to really show what he could do. But looking back the previous year, he had a top 5 rookie season of all quarterbacks in history, pretty much. So how could he really realistically go from being a top 5 rookie quarterback to being this average bum quarterback in the league? It's not really that possible. The only thing that changed was his coaching, and he went from one of the best offensive coordinators in the league to probably the worst offensive coordinator we've ever seen.
I
At
don't know
least,
why he was even in that spot. He had no
yeah,
clue what he was doing.
the thing with that too is I was talking to Eric about this earlier, and it's just because one of our friends doesn't really believe in the Patriots too much, and um, I was saying about no one could have predicted it being that much of a disaster. Everyone didn't think it was going to go over well, but everyone thought eventually they would get it because Matt is a pretty smart guy. It's not some of his defenses weren't the greatest, but he's a pretty smart guy in general. So you would think that he would be able to kind of grasp things, and it just never worked. And that was just the most really frustrating part and surprising part. I thought they were going to start out slow, and then eventually they would kind of get a hold of things. It's just that they never really comprehended
I was
anything until
waiting
really
for
that
that
last
too.
Bills game, where it looked like they went to everything of old and stop trying to do the stuff that they try to implement. So I think really this year is going to be the year to really evaluate Mac because we all know Bill O'Brien from when he was here before. He's a really good coach. Did really well in Houston. I think the biggest problem with him in Houston was just him being in charge of player personnel, and that's not even something that he really fully wanted. It's more of ownership kind of pushing on him. So he's a really good coach. He coached really well there. He coached really well at Penn State. He's a really good coach here, and then did really well at Alabama. Some of the Alabama fans weren't too happy because they had a couple losses this year. 2 losses is apparently insane to them, even though they
Like unheard
scored.
of. It's unheard of down there.
Yeah, but they scored. I think in the 2 losses, one of them was like 35 points, the other one was 40 something. So it wasn't Bill O'Brien, Bill O'Brien's fault in those. But he's a really good offensive coordinator. So I think by having him kind of lead this offense in the right direction, this will be the year to kind of really see, does Mac take the step that we thought we were going to take last year and take it this year? And what do the Patriots do? Not only in the draft, but even maybe a trade before or afterhand to surround him with more talent. I think the talent around him isn't bad. It's not anything spectacular. You would really like to see him have a true number 1 wide receiver. And you see that with a lot of the teams where they do that, where you look at the Eagles, you look at the 49ers, they have all that talent around them. And that's the really point of having a rookie quarterback. So that way you have the rookie contract there. But you look at Kendrick Bourne, I really think he's good. And I think that he'll take a step forward with actual coaching. I think that's a big problem where he just looked kind of lost last year. And I think he needs a lot more harder coaching than he got. So I think he'll do better in this year. I think Thornton is going to have a better year because some of his mistakes looked a lot more mental, and I think that's coaching where he actually looked like he kind of regressed as the year went on. And I think Parker, they actually figured out really how to use him towards the end of the last year with instead of doing a lot of those goes and 50-50 balls, they did a lot of the slants and in cuts and short things with him. So I think they have a lot of kind of 2s and 3s for wide receivers. They just need that one number one guy. And then having Henry and Gasecki, I think will be kind of an upgrade instead of having John Smith. So they have some pieces. It just I'd like to see them get a little bit more. But we'll have to see how it goes. And then Juju, I've completely forgot to even mention him.
Mr.
Um,
TikTok boy.
yeah. So he's pretty much very similar to how Jacoby had played, but just with more yak. So I'm interested to see how that works out. So they've got a lot of different pieces.
Contract that he got too, which I thought
Hmm.
was really interesting that
Yeah.
they committed to a similar
Hmm.
contract with him as Myers did get.
Yeah. No, agreed. And then another thing too is that the people that were upset about Myers leaving, is everyone agrees that the Patriots need to get faster and quicker on offense. You can't do that by bringing back everyone. You have to make changes. And Jacoby's a really nice player, but he never gets separation, and that's part of the reason why his touchdown scores are pretty low, because he can't get the separation in the red zone in order to get touchdowns. So I think replacing him, even though I really like him as a player, I think they just need more kind of playmakers. So I'm hoping that Juju kind of brings that in there.
Yeah, I actually like the move. I think it makes sense for the Patriots right now. I think he definitely will help that receiving core, and he's somebody who will provide value. But,
Hmm.
he's still not a true wide receiver one in
Hmm.
my eyes. And I don't think that should be all that they do to improve the wide
Hmm.
receiving core in this offseason and call it a day. They do need more, and it's just unfortunate because they haven't really had a true wide receiver one in a while. And I would love to see Mac with one
Hmm.
because I think the people who, jump to just hate on Mac and everything that Mac does sometimes don't really realize or want to talk about the fact that he hasn't really been set up to be able to succeed that much here.
Hmm.
And it's that's everything else around him and circumstantial, and they need to surround him with the offensive pieces to allow him to succeed, just like we talked about this with the Dolphins with Tua.
Hmm.
They surrounded him with so much talent that it's kind of hard to not like make that work
Hmm.
and not make yourself look like a really good quarterback when you have all of those pieces that he has. And what they surrounded Mac with is just not as much as what the Dolphins had
Hmm.
surrounded Tua with. And I do think Juju is a good step, and it showed effort in my eyes that they are aware that that is an area they need to improve in. But I still think that they need to do more. From that standpoint, obviously the offensive line last year was also a concern. And that's something that I'm looking to hopefully see them address, in the draft and beyond that going into the season, just as another area that Mac really didn't have much time to throw the ball
Hmm.
last year because he didn't really have the protection. So that's another area that I'm looking at that they need to improve in.
Yep. No, I agree completely. And I think that really goes also back to the coaching aspect, where you had Matt Patricia coaching not just the offense as an offensive coordinator, but he was also the offensive line coach.
Yeah.
And I think by having Clem here and by having Bill O'Brien, I think that's really going to settle a lot of things, where I feel like they had the talent at offensive line. They just really underperformed there. So I think by having an actual offensive line coach, I think that's going to help improve that offensive line. And I also think the other thing I forgot to mention with Mac is that just by one of the things they took away from him last year were the checks that he makes at the line. And one of his biggest strengths is his mind. And if you take that away from him, you're taking away his biggest asset. And I think that's going to be something that they put back into the offense. So that way he can kind of really play around at the line, make the matchups that he needs, and make the changes there. So I think that's something they're going to go back to with Bill O'Brien, because that's something they've done before. And I think that's going to really help him succeed this coming year.
Yeah, and Mac wants to be here. You can tell the
Mhm.
enthusiasm is there, and he was so excited when he got drafted here, and he was working really, really hard to learn the playbook, which is super complex with the Patriots. And, he wants to be here and he wants to make it work. And I noticed visible frustration on his face during some games last year.
Mhm.
And, I think that was all circumstantial. It was everything that was going on last year and the fact that they weren't really giving him the help that he
Mhm.
needed to be able to succeed. So I agree with you. I do think the offense is going to look a lot different with Bill O'Brien here because there were so many times that they literally looked incompetent And I was like, what is this team doing? Like, this is just like, there was stuff that was literally just football IQ that they seemed to lack in certain areas. And I was like, this just cannot happen. Like, they look like a freaking high school team in some of these situations because they're just making mistakes that they shouldn't be making. And I think a lot of that is going to, be eliminated now with Bill O'Brien running the offense, because it's somebody who actually is an offensive mind and has been in the Patriot system before, like you said, and can hopefully help elevate Mac's play. So I'm looking forward to that too. I also thought it was interesting. I do want to get your thoughts on this, because they did sign Trace McSorley also to add quarterback depth to the roster. Do you think that was something that they wanted to do just to have another option at the quarterback position? Because it seems obvious to me that they're still rolling with Mac as the guy, and perhaps maybe they just wanted to have just another option out there.
Yeah, I think he is really more just depth, and then probably more likely he might just be a practice squad kind of guy at the end of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did draft someone this draft, not someone high, but maybe fourth or fifth rounder as a developmental guy, where they have Mac and Bailey are kind of the similar kind of playing styles. I think they may try and get someone that's a little bit more kind of different, so like a mobile guy or something along those lines that has the physical skills, but maybe is kind of really raw, and they could develop him. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But I don't see them making any sort of huge move to try and replace Mac or Bailey, and even Bailey. I don't think I'm not the biggest fan of Zappy, just from what I've seen from before. I think some fans get a little overhyped with what he did, but don't really look at the teams that he was facing, where he was facing the bottom two defensive teams in the league, and pretty much anyone could have scored on them. So,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
yeah,
it's definitely good to have that quarterback depth for sure. It's definitely not a bad idea at all. Like, I didn't hate that McSorley signing at all, because I was like, the absolute worst thing that happens here is, he just is somebody who is just kind of exists and is on the roster, and they know that they have available, because obviously, you don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, we hate to see this happen, but with injuries and everything, if Mac were to get injured, he is somebody who is there, that we kind of know what we're going to get from him. And people have seen enough of him at this point, to the point where he's somebody who you can kind of just call upon in a situation like that if Mac were to get injured or can't play. So it's always good to just have that added depth. And it would be interesting to see them draft somebody, but like you said, it's not going to be like a 10th overall pick type of guy or something like that. Somebody that like as high up as when they did draft Mac.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think the reports out there about Levis is really
Yeah.
overblown, where him being the top 30 pick, top 30 visit. The Patriots have done this before. Even they had Trevor Lawrence in for a top 30 workout before. And that was just to really gain intel on him. So I think that's their kind of one of their big things, where they try and just gain intel on other opponents. So not all the visits that they have is for someone that they're interested in drafting. It could be someone they're interested in just kind of scheming against, or someone they may be interested in signing in the future, where we also see that, where they know they're not going to draft them because they're not going to have the ability to. But let's say they're available in a few years from now. What did they look like? What were their kind of meetings look like? So it's just more kind of intel gathering there.
Yeah, which is smart. And, obviously Bill's always kind of a step ahead of everybody else with the mental aspect of kind of making certain types of moves and decisions. So it's definitely a smart move for the Patriots to be doing things like that. But, they have that 14th pick. Do you think that they end up staying at 14, or do you think they end up trading down?
My I kind of hope that they stay and pick or move up, just because I think it's gonna be a long 4 months on Twitter if
Oh, yeah. Moving down is such a
if they move
Patriots thing to
down.
do.
But
That's such a Patriots thing to do, though, is
yeah,
move
but
down.
I think they're gonna move down because the thing is, from what we've been seeing out there, is that a lot of teams don't feel like there's that much top end talent in the first round, where you can get someone really around from around 14-ish through the second is about the same sort of talent. So if that's the case and there's not someone a clear number one pick out there, I think they're definitely going to move down into probably still the first round pick and get either a second or a third. And something we see all the time from them. If the value is not there, I don't think they're just going to pick just the pick.
It's
But
so
if there's
true.
someone like a Broderick Jones or another player that's a high caliber. So another one of the offensive tackles, one of the top three ones. I think that's who they're going to try and stick and pick at if they're there. And the one thing that is going to help them is just how many teams need to draft quarterbacks. So if 4 or 5 quarterbacks go in the before 14, that's just going to push the talent up to them. So there's more likelihood that they may stay there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. That could be another reason too why Levis might have had a top 30 visit with the Patriots, where they're trying to convince people that, hey, maybe we're interested in him, and someone will try and jump ahead of them to draft him. That way it will leave more talent around for them to pick at 14. So that's another option as well.
Yeah, Broderick Jones is a huge name being thrown out there. I would love
Mhm.
for the Patriots to get somebody like him. Like you said, if he's still on the board by the time that they pick at 14, I would hope that they would jump on the opportunity and draft somebody like him, knowing
Mhm.
that that's one of their biggest needs at the moment. And I think they would.
Mhm.
It's definitely always tough with the way that Belichick drafts too, because he does
Mhm.
sometimes make surprising decisions in the draft that don't make sense to us, but
Yeah.
obviously make sense to him. And
Mhm.
everybody's so reactionary, like, what is he doing? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? It's Patriots, but I guess we just have to trust Belichick and trust the process.
Mhm.
But it's if you have one of those top 3 offensive tackles available and you're picking at 14, you're drafting one of those players, and
Mhm.
you're not pulling a Belichick, like, I want to trade down so that I can get more picks later
Mhm.
on type of situation. Because that is essentially, to me, the most important position that
Mhm.
they need to address in this draft.
No, agreed. Yeah, if one of the top offense tackles there, I think it's a sure bet that they're going to try and draft one of those. I hope at least, and that's what they should do. I think the top 2 biggest needs really are tackle and wide receiver, like we
Yep.
kind of really mentioned, and really the talent there at wide receiver isn't really there for a 14 pick. It's not like it was like it's been in many of the years beforehand. There's some good names out there like Flowers.
I would
Um,
love Zay Flowers as in
mhm.
a Patriots uniform.
Um,
It seems like it would make sense too. He wouldn't have to really go
yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah, no, I like Flowers a lot. He's really shifty. I think he gives you kind of that Edelman sort of wide receiver out there. So he's not that big, really fast top end wide receiver one that is the prototypical wide receiver one. But you could say that Julian Edelman was a wide receiver one. He just wasn't a boundary guy. He was a slot guy. So I think Zay Flowers really gives you that. And then Jackson Smith, Nigba is another one that's one of the probably him and Flowers are the only 2 first round picks. Um,
But
but
you could get
again,
him later in the first round.
are you gonna pick them at 14? I would say no. I don't think they're worth it at 14.
I completely agree with you on that. I do think receiver is a necessary thing that they have to focus on in this draft,
Hmm.
but it's not like there is an outstanding receiver that it would be stupid of them to pass up on at
Hmm.
14, because if they were to stay at that 14th pick, I think that would better be used on a tackle, and then down later on in the draft, if one of those
Hmm.
guys is still available, then you do take them later on, but it wouldn't make sense really to draft one of them at 14,
Hmm.
because then you will miss out on the tackles that you should be
Yep.
drafting in that position.
Yep. Agreed. And then the other kind of thing with the wide receiver group too is that they could also trade for someone where there's still names out there. I don't think they're going to get Hopkins just based off of everything that's been kind of said about him and really everything out there. But there could also be a wild card out there that we don't know about. Like last year, AJ Brown wasn't being actively shopped, so no one really knew about him being shopped beforehand. So that there could be a wild card that we just don't know. And then look at the Patriots back in 2007, the trade for both Wes Welker and Randy Moss before
Yeah.
the draft or during the draft. So it could happen. Could happen today. Could have happened tomorrow. I wouldn't, or maybe even the next day. So I wouldn't be shocked if we did see a trade in the next coming days for a wide receiver, either someone that's been out there or even a complete wild card.
we could get off this show and be done recording, and then we go on Twitter, and all of a sudden news
Yeah.
breaks that they traded for wide receiver one, and I'd be like, well, time to go back on and re-record. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. But it's yeah, I mean, that was definitely another thing that I was going to ask about too, is how confident you are that they actually will acquire a true wide receiver one before the season starts, because I feel like they've in the past tried to almost make people into a wide receiver one, or feel like they might have within their organization somebody who can fit those shoes, and it just hasn't really worked out. So they do kind of need to make a big splash to get somebody that we can all confidently sit here and say, this guy is a true wide receiver one that is going to elevate the entire offense.
Yeah, yeah, I would like to think that they're going to do something, because really the only moves that they made was just switching Jacoby Myers for Juju Smith-Schuster.
Literally, yeah.
Um, they could the one caveat would be depending on what they think of Thornton's development for next year. So is Thornton going to take a next step forward? Do they think he can make the next step forward and say, well, maybe we don't need to draft someone because we have him, or even Marcus Jones, where he says he likes playing cornerback better, but I don't think I've ever seen a player on this team being that explosive and that quick and fast.
No.
Ever really. And I think he really gives you kind of that Tyreek Hill factor, where he's not a huge guy, but he's really quick and he's really fast and explosive with the ball in his hands. So is it something that may make more sense for them down the road for maybe converting him to wide receiver? And maybe he is that number one guy where he's not this huge boundary number one wide receiver, but he's this quick, really, really fast, running slants and end arounds and all of that sort of stuff. So that could be another option as well. So I wouldn't fully count that out. I don't think that's going to be the case just based on what they're saying. It sounds like they view him more as a cornerback, but he's really explosive. He's really talented. So even him 10, 15 times a game could be really beneficial for them too. So I think he's a really good playmaker that they need to kind of use a little bit more.
Yeah, and there were people out there who were saying, on Twitter after they got Juju, like, this better not be their big splash. Like, they better not be viewing Juju as a wide receiver one. But I actually don't think that they feel that way at all. I don't think they acquired him for him to be a wide receiver one. I think he was just somebody that they brought in that they felt could be valuable in the receiving core, and somebody who is an upgrade from, what they've had, which I do agree with. But I don't think that they view him as the top guy either. And they can't go in my opinion, really, with what they have right now on the receiving core. And for me to feel really confident that they can stack up with the other offenses in the division.
Nope. No, yeah, I agreed. I think I'd be a lot more comfortable if they made some sort of move. So what that move is, we'll have to see. But I really hope that we see something in the next couple of days. That way we're not kind of wondering and hoping what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's, and the draft is a very interesting day, that first day of the draft, because you always see teams shift and swap picks or trade for somebody, and then they trade their pick for said player. And the Patriots are a very active team usually on draft day in terms of moving things around and switching picks for other picks, or, trading for something or somebody like around the time of the draft or on the draft day. So I'm looking at the Patriots as a team that, out of a lot of teams, is likely to make some sort of move around that time, because we've seen Belichick be active on draft day when it comes to moving things around, because, he doesn't see anybody at that pick that he feels is worth drafting that high. So then he'll move down to get more picks, or just swapping things. So I do think that they could do something like that, where they pull something out of the water that maybe nobody expects on draft day, because it's not like he's really the type of guy who is kind of like stagnant on draft day. Like, he's always been one of the coaches and GMs who kind of has like moved stuff around and been able to, just show some action on draft day. So I do think that he probably has other things in mind, more so than just players that he wants to draft.
Yep. No, great. I think I wouldn't be totally shocked if anything happens like that. If we see like Jerry Jeudy come here, or Someone kind of completely out of left field. I know one of the names that was somewhat rumored before and that kind of went down was are the 49ers thinking about trading Brandon Ayuk? Is that
Yeah,
someone that could
that'd be
be
interesting.
an interesting spot where he kind of really underperformed his first few years, but had a really big step forward last year. And he's kind of one of those really high end talent players. So is someone like them or someone completely that we're not even thinking of. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, Jerry Judy's definitely somebody who I think would make a lot of sense here.
Hmm.
I do wonder if they would view him as a little bit too expensive. But he's somebody who I think could be a significant upgrade within the offense. And I think
Hmm.
he's somebody who, if you give him to Mac, I think Mac would be able to, show more improvement in terms of
Hmm.
his play too, because that's a guy who you can use as a serious weapon, you
Yep.
know?
No, agreed. And then I feel like if you're comparing the two big names out there this year, this offseason was Jerry Judy and DeAndre Hopkins. If I was giving up any sort of resources, I would rather give them up for Judy, who's a lot younger and a lot faster. Where Hopkins is an aging wide receiver. He's going to be 31 this year. He's not fast to begin with. So what is he going to look like after a year? Where that's really 32 is really when they start to decline. Whereas Judy is still in his prime. He's 25, 26 years old, 24 actually. He'll be 25 this coming year. So, well, actually, no, he just turned 24. So, what's he going to look like? And he's played with Mac before at Alabama. So I think that's another big thing to factor in. What's his chemistry there? How do they do together? Are there things they can do together that they just have that chemistry with? So that's another big factor too.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a huge thing, and I think it's something that Mac would be all in support of too, is
Hmm.
having that familiarity, a familiar face that he played with in college where they know each other's playing style, and
Hmm.
that would just help with Mac's confidence too, I feel like, because confidence is another thing I also feel like that Mac could definitely use more of in terms of his abilities here, because I don't
Hmm.
really know that he's been getting that support that he needs really from the personnel to feel like he really can succeed here. And obviously it
Hmm.
didn't help when people were chanting like we want Zappy
Yeah.
last year too, because that has to feel a little bit shitty for him. And so I feel like being able to have that support and bringing in somebody who can help elevate his confidence, I feel like can make a huge difference for him.
Yep. No, agree completely.
And the coaching staff too, they've kind of always held Mac on a tight leash in a way a little bit when it comes to the type of offensive plays that were being called and just kind of what they're letting him do and not do. I just think they need to kind of loosen those reins a little bit and trust that he can do a little bit more than they're actually letting him do. So that's definitely another thing to me that's been a little frustrating to watch during Mac's time here, is they won't really let him make a lot of those big plays. They've
Hmm.
really remained on the more cautious side when it comes to play calling and in terms of what they're allowing Mac to do. And I think there's a lot more that he can do that we just haven't been able to see. And I think for some people they're just blaming that on Mac's talent. But
Hmm.
I really don't think that that's the case. I think that Mac has more abilities than what they've allowed him to really show in his time that he's been here.
No, I agree completely, and I think the other thing that I think he gets a really bad rap where they say he's got no arm talent, he's slow, he's immobile, but you actually look at him, he's actually not that slow. He's faster than Brady was. He actually ran a faster 40 time than Patrick Mahomes did, and I think faster than Josh Allen did. So he's not this slow as molasses quarterback out there that's a sitting duck in the pocket. And we did see him at some points last year, being a little bit more mobile, running when he had the opportunity. And his arm is fine. Arm strength is something that you can always gain. And we saw it with Tom when he started. He didn't have the biggest arm in the world. That was one of his biggest kind of drawbacks in the draft. Everyone says arm wasn't strong enough, and that's something you can gain over the years, and that's something Mac can gain over the years. You
Yeah.
can't really gain accuracy, and that's something that Mac is very accurate. There's the only quarterback I can think of off the top of my head that's actually gained accuracy is Josh Allen.
Yeah, because he
Pretty
just does it
much,
all.
pretty much, there hasn't really been many examples of a quarterback actually improving their accuracy coming from college to going into the NFL. Josh being the really one exception, but Mac, one of his biggest strengths was accuracy in his mind, and he's not going to get any really worse on his accuracy unless his arm falls off or anything. And they need to really kind of unleash what he's able to do for like a play calling and checks at the line. So I think having him kind of more unleashed there, and just over the years, him gaining arm strength is going to help him too. It's not like he's throwing softballs out there. He can put zip on the ball when he needs to. So I'm not really too concerned about that.
Yeah, and I think he definitely has a strong, football IQ in terms of
Mhm.
he's really aware of what goes on the field, because you've seen some quarterbacks who just seem to not have any idea what's going on around them. And I think there's a lot of situations in which we've seen Mac end up in, a spot where he doesn't have the support around him, or he doesn't have the offensive line to be able to protect him when he is trying to throw the football.
Mhm.
But I think that's a lot more about what it is, because you'll see him like be aware of like where people are on the field and what he should be doing in given
Mhm.
situations. Like there's like what I really like about him is that he does have that composure, whereas he doesn't really like freak out in a lot of
Mhm.
situations and not really know what to do. So I think that knowledge and IQ is there for him, and that's why
Mhm.
I feel like they can grow on that. Like you said, I do think there's a lot of pressure on him this year, though. If
Mhm.
they're doing what they're doing now to improve everything else around him, including getting a new offensive coordinator in here and just somebody who can really help develop an offensive scheme that can work for him, and they're doing all these things to improve the offense, and especially if they bring in a true wide receiver one, if he's still continuing to make a lot of the mistakes that he was making this past year and we're not really seeing improvement, then I will sit here, after this upcoming season and be able to feel like he's just not it.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, yeah. Like I had said before, I'm very high in Mac. And this is the year to really kind of see and have him put it all together. Is he going to take the next step forward? Is he going to really show what he is? And I'm more than willing to admit if I'm wrong. I don't think I'm going to be, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think by having the changes in coaching is going to be the biggest thing for him. And then also seeing what they do in the draft and seeing what they do for any sorts of trades, and just having more kind of years together with the players that they had gotten before. Um, I think he can and will take that next step forward. If he doesn't, then something you're gonna have to say, well, what's our next plan? What are we gonna do next? So it'll be interesting to see from there. But I don't think it's gonna get to that, but we will see.
Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to time will tell, and I guess we're
Hmm.
just gonna have to wait and look back on all of this and just see if it panned out or not, because that's all we really can do.
Yep.
But hey, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you hopping on here with me and talking some Patriots.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
Just can you just before we close out here, can you just
Mhm.
remind everybody where they can find you on social media and where they can find your show?
Yep. Yeah. You could find us at pats300levelpod.com. Our Twitter and Instagram, it's pats300levelpod. And then we're the Patriots 300 level podcast. You could find us on any of the podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google. And then we're also on YouTube as well. So you can give us a follow, subscribe, and always can rate and review us and let us know how we're doing.
Awesome. And shout out to your co-host Eric too. It'll be fun to kind of see what some of his thoughts are. I'm sure I'll see it on Twitter too, on his Twitter, just
Mhm.
kind of his thoughts on all of this. But give him my best. And I really appreciate you hopping on here with me.
All right. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to see what they do tomorrow night during the draft. And then always like to join again and discuss what happens.
100%. Yeah. And thanks everybody, as always, for tuning into the show. Hope you all enjoy the draft tomorrow. Hope, if you are a Patriots fan like myself, that they don't disappoint us and make people want to throw things at their TVs during the draft tomorrow. If you are a fan of another team, hope your team doesn't disappoint you tomorrow either, or make you feel angry at some of their picks. But it should be fun. It always is to see, some of this top level talent go to different teams. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Hope you'll have a great rest of your night as well. And thanks for tuning in and checking out the show. And I will talk to you all next time. Take care, everybody.